Have you ever wondered how your sales performance compares against your competitors and peers? The B2B Sales Benchmark Report provides the definitive guide to what success looks like in 2021. See how you compare in terms of win rate, sales cycle, average deal value, relationships, and engagement. You can see the results and get the full report at ebster.com/B2B-sales-benchmarks. This is Sales Ops Demystified, the #1 most downloaded podcast in sales operations. We invite the brightest minds in sales operations onto the show to deconstruct the why, what, and how behind rep productivity, forecasting, metrics, and all things revenue. This podcast is brought to you by Ebster, the leading customer engagement platform for Salesforce. Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. We are joined by Zoe Jong, who, as I've been discovering on my research, is a big name in the Salesforce space over in Canada, on Canada's west coast, but also is basically running revenue operations at Tasktop. So I'm assuming we're going to jump into a bit of Salesforce stuff, which is going to be great, but then also we're going to be discussing the revenue operation at Tasktop. Zoe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's kick off by understanding how you first got into either sales or revenue operations, whatever label we want to use. How did you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, a little bit non-traditional, or I guess I think the more I talk to people in the sales ops space, perhaps it is more traditional. I come from a highly technical background. So I went to school for chemistry, and then I was doing electrochemical research when I came out of school. And, I knew I was looking for something a little bit more project-oriented, a little bit more working with others. I think research is great, but it can be solitary at times. And so I was looking for an opportunity to get into the business world, which is a little bit difficult, I think, when you come with a chemistry background. I ended up getting a job essentially as a glorified receptionist, an office manager, answering phones, EAing for, our CEO, and was able to just, once I finished those tasks, ask around, see if anybody else was available. And I think very fortuitously was able to grow laterally, taking on finance, HR, sales ops, really get a taste for what all of these different departments have to offer. Before, I think, realizing that really where I wanted to go was the sales ops route, the ability to kind of take something that is ever shifting and constantly improve it, I think was just right up my alley. And so I found myself doing more specialization in sales ops. And then before I knew it, it was really kind of what I was doing with my life. So yeah, it's great. I think I'm happy to have the job and in the job every day. So.
Sure. Now, interestingly, I also studied chemistry, and I had the same revelation after doing a final year project, realizing that actually I'm not that good at being super detailed playing with chemicals, but probably exactly the same. But so what I wanted to ask about that is that you are obviously a highly analytical person. Why do you think that, knowing that, or do you think that part of you drove you towards sales ops or enables you to enjoy sales ops more?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there's a certain amount of wanting to know how things work that definitely plays into it. I think even as a kid, I always wanted to know, how does these things work? And I was really into building, and I think that that's what originally drove me into chemistry in the first place. And sales ops sort of gives you that same feeling, right? You can still go in and really deeply dive into whether it's an individual problem or a piece of software. You really have the opportunity to dig in and really understand what's happening there and then go and build more onto that. And so I think it sort of kind of fits both of those niches for me.
Got it. Awesome. And then this is a super fascinating journey through the business, right? Because you came from doing a relatively low role over 9 years, right?
That's right.
Coming and now being responsible for the whole, like, I assume, sales marketing, the operations of sales marketing, customer success, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's kind of like from lead acquisition all the way through customer retention.
Nice. So that's like, congratulations. That's an amazing journey.
Thank you.
Awesome. So now looking at the sales tech stack that you're currently running.
So yeah, we've got a lot of tools in there. I think like all good ops people, you find yourself every now and then discovering a new tool that snuck its way in. But obviously we have Salesforce as one of our primary tools. Salesforce has been great for me over the years in that it's really, really customizable. So I've been able to kind of build out custom objects, build a custom workflow to support what we were trying to achieve with, who was leading each individual department. And I think this year we're looking at, okay, is that still the same process that we're living today? Is there any ways that we can get rid of in that tool? And then, a lot of tools that kind of circle around the outside of Salesforce. So Cirrus Insight to integrate into that. We use Discover.org to sort of like a lead database, lead purification a little bit. We're recently bought Chorus to do our call analytics, which is great. And so, yeah, I think, and then from a corporate standpoint, of course, we've got all of the good tools like Slack and Jira and lots of things hanging around that I think support software specifically.
Sure. And just to give us a picture, how many, sales and service reps is your operation team currently supporting?
Our go-to-market team is probably about 80 people. So sort of inclusive of all of the customer-facing teams.
Cool. And does that include
relatively small?
that includes marketing as well?
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. And then how many people in operations supporting them?
We just got a third, so now there are 3 of us.
Yeah, that's great. And do they sit within revenue operations as well, or are they aligned to, say, sales or service?
So yeah, they sit inside of revenue operations, but their individual activities are a little bit more aligned to the sales side.
Got it. Awesome. I'm assuming your team is responsible for the data quality with inside Salesforce. Is that correct?
Yeah, I like to say that the data quality is the responsibility of the individual putting in the data. It's our responsibility to ensure that data brings them value too. So I think one of the things that I bring up the most often is, there's sort of a difference between the things we want to track and the things that we can actually have tracked. And so I think that there's a desire to say, oh, well, we want sales to give us this information and that information and this information, but where's the straight line between sales providing that information and then like driving more business for us and for them? I think the more you make decisions based on that the individual you're looking for the value from is getting value out of it, that the data quality hopefully becomes the responsibility of the person entering the data. Although, I do say you probably get about 3 fields that you could ask for that are just because it's your job fields. And those ones probably it's up to us to ensure there's some sort of validation or automation to help make sure those fields get filled out.
Got it. Yeah. So you're passing the responsibility to the individual, but you're also saying that we will try and help you to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Awesome. And on that note, when you do have something that you want either service or sales reps to do that might not necessarily be in their be an immediate benefit for them? How do you go about influencing them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always multi-pronged, especially when you're asking these people and to be out there and be selling your product. And, of course, I think we typically have 5 or 6 different requirements of salespeople at any given time that they're supposed to be inputting data. I think the biggest one is getting executive buy-in, right? Ensuring that their management wants that information too, or understands the value of that information and where it's going, so they can communicate that back. Even if it's not something that brings me value right at this moment, I think understanding that the value downstream is helpful. And when those questions come up saying, this is taking a good amount of my time, or, I just always forget to do that. I think having a manager who's there to support that process is really, really positive, as well as just systematic changes. If there's something that we need filled out weekly in Salesforce, then there should definitely be a list view that's editable where they can edit all of those all at once, or update them kind of in one solid go without having to open, edit, click, save, open, edit, click, save. Anything that can reduce the number of clicks or kind of the pain to filling out that information, the better it will be. So kind of throughout our organization, we're using things like validation or list rules or automation to bring up kind of screen flows to help support that process all across the board.
Got it. And are you personally like the Salesforce admin, or is one of the other people in your team like the person doing that stuff?
Yeah, I think I have another person in my team who is just starting to get into that. I think over the years, I have built up our Salesforce organization. So, of course, I am the only one I have to blame when I find gross stuff in there. I think it's been long enough that I've purged out all of the really terrible things. And now, of course, when I come across kind of older, ill-written things, I'm always like, oh, really, past me is not taking care of future me in this instance. But hopefully there's not too many of those in the system. But yeah, I would say I'm majorly our primary admin, and then we also have a marketing ops who's helping in the system, as well as one of my team sales ops people.
Got it. Making reps more productive.
Yeah, I think I've always struggled personally. We have a very remote team, so it's very difficult to be right on top of what they're doing, or what calls they're having. And especially, we've run a very remote team on pretty not non-tracked process, but we just got Chorus recently. I think we're definitely looking into a sort of sales AI tool this year, one that can overlay over all of the data and populate things that could potentially be at risk because they've been open too long, or amounts too high, amounts too low, not enough people. That type of thing will be great. I think for today, a lot of it is just understanding the seller themselves. We're running a sort of day in the life this quarter with my team, where we are speaking to every salesperson, asking them, what's keeping you from doing your work? What do you find the most tedious? What do you think you could use training on? Gathering that information, and then weekly meeting with my team to sort of disseminate that information amongst us, so that we can all, I think, understand what sales is actually doing on a day-to-day basis, both from the kind of seller point of view and from the sales management point of view, and then take that as a good kind of, let's create a roadmap out of that as to how we can make them more productive, how we can get the right data or the right behaviors out of them.
Got it. So actually having a call or sitting down with each salesperson and mapping out what they're doing in a day, and then trying to...
Yeah, I split them up amongst my entire team so that it would be easier, but that's why it's taking the full quarter and not just being done in a week. But I do think when you can get, I think the opinion of the person who will be impacted by the change the most, you really start to you really start to learn, I think the best next step, you can see, okay, with across everybody, these are the things that we could really take some quick wins on. And so although it does take quite a bit of time at the front end, I think that the value you get over the year is definitely worth it.
Got it. And most of these reps are remote because they're field agents that have to go like selling reasonably like large ACVs, so actually have to go and work with the customers. Is that the reason?
That's right. Yeah, the majority of them are sort of outbound sales. We do have a few account managers. Basically, main priorities are nurturing, qualifying the pipeline, as well as working with the sellers on sort of like an inside sales basis. So yeah, we do have both of those, and we are kind of including both in the day in the life. But for the most part, most of them are as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Have you had any like shocking realization? What one have you done the day in the lives yet? And then out of the ones you have done, do you have any like shocking realizations, like that salespeople were doing this thing when they shouldn't be doing that?
So we haven't started this quarter yet, but I have done it in the past. I think in doing it in the past, that is sort of the joke I said about the tech stack, right? You're always kind of occasionally bumping into tech stack items that you didn't know were in existence. So yeah, I think there's always a little piece of that, right? They're using some piece of software, or they've put something in their Chrome or their email that that's a surprise to us. But I also think Cirrus itself was a surprise to us when we did this the last time. And, having a tool that can easily create leads, create contacts, update activities really easily, as well as give that snapshot was a good enough ROI that we thought we would roll it out at a larger scale.
And this is like a case study for software marketers, right? So if we're like trying to get our software in the hands, there's like, because that's beautiful for serious marketing.
Right. Where they're like, download this. I think until companies have pretty strict policies about that, probably.
Sales forecasting. What is the process and how are you guys involved?
Yeah, the process is very much still based on our sales leadership. So basically, we're involved in creating a series of dashboards, reporting, trying to slice and dice the data the best we can. I think like many other orgs, we have a significant amount of custom fields that are populating, whether that's their workflow manually or they themselves are just formula fields that make that type of reporting better. And so, yeah, we've created some new dashboards this year, as well as a kind of all new reporting to try and support the changes in what we're asking sales to be measured by. So this year we're really pivoting towards a just new and expansion, targets, new and expansion compensation, all of that. And so kind of updating all of the reporting and dashboarding to support that. And then the sales leaders basically consume that data. Right now I think we don't have a significantly amazing process for that. Each one kind of does it in their own way. I'd love to say we're using something like Salesforce forecasting, but it was a little bit limiting. So now it's, I think just these open reports and kind of live conversations that are happening.
Sure. And then from your experience in sales operations, what has been a sales metric that is your favorite or is the most insightful?
Oh, is my favorite. I think that the types of measurements, it's so easy to just run up a bunch of measurements and say, okay, now we're measuring the number of new opportunities or the percentage of renewals in this way or that way, or I think each individual department kind of slicing their own piece of the pie, right? Saying, okay, from this point to this point, this is what I'm measuring. I think the KPIs that I personally love the most are ones that suddenly when you're looking at them, you feel like, wow, this is really insightful. I think for example, we used to measure, okay, here's just the number of demos we've done. Interesting. But saying something like, okay, here are the number of technical one evals that are still open, or, the percentage of technical one evals that have gone to close one. Those are really metrics where I'm like, suddenly you're crossing those two different functions. And it's more interesting to me to learn about, if we're getting to technical win, but we're not getting to close, or there's a delay to close, there's something there that we can really improve upon. Or, maybe there's something there that we can provide more resources to the sellers so they can, have more proposals or have better outreach during that time frame. So I think, from a purely operational side of house, those are the type of metrics that I love, because I think in and of themselves, they highlight areas that can be improved.
Got it. So actionable conversions between different stages.
Yes. Yeah.
Over time and then tweak. Yeah, of course. And finally, who in the world of sales operations or revenue operations has taught you the most? I would have to say I run the local community group here, the Salesforce community group. And my co-leader is just an amazing, amazing woman. I mean, I think she's definitely inspirational in both, I think, just how to look at the system a little bit more, how to be a little bit better organized. Her name is Alexandra I always mess this up, Radovinovich. And I would say, from just being a better sales ops leader, I definitely account a bunch of that to her. So big shout out. Well, what was her name again? It was
Alexandra Radovinovich.
Shout out to Alexandra.
Yes.
And we should also do a shout out to the Salesforce event you guys run, right?
Yes, please. So I basically, for those of the people on the phone who don't know about Dream In events, basically they're community-led mini Dreamforces. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but they are Salesforce conferences. They are run anywhere from, there's some that are half days, there's some that are full weeks, or typically, 3 days, 4 days, something like that. They're all over the world, and True North Dreamin' was the first Canadian community-led conference, so lots of alliteration there. But last year we hosted in Ottawa. We had intended to migrate cities every year, and this year we made it to Vancouver. Hooray! So
where can people find True North Dreaming online? Just Google that, I guess.
So yeah, if they go to True North Dreamin', there's no G there. So truenorthdreamin.com, then they'll find our lovely website and information. It's April 23rd and 24th in 2020, and we're hosting here at the UBC Nest, which is a beautiful new LEED Platinum building. So,
well, there we go. So here are the things I liked from the conversation. Your comments about being analytical and that driving you towards, or you actually more the lesson of you finding your home in sales operations, which I thought was quite interesting, and it does make sense that your analytical self would do that. Having the individual being responsible for data quality, but still trying to help them, doing that. And then the day in the life exercise, which I think really every sales ops or rev ops team should do, and maybe they do, but it's not so formal, or they haven't just given it the nice name, right? Because it reminded me of doing customer calls when you're creating an early startup product. You have calls, try to understand your customer's life. And this is kind of what you guys are doing with your sales reps, which I think is really important.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
So Zoe, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, it was my pleasure as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. If you are listening on a podcast listening application, then please subscribe, rate, and review. And if you have any questions about the show, if you know a guest, or if you have any questions about sales operations, just hit me up at tomhunt@ebster.com. That's tomhunt@ebster.com.